All right, I was gonna invite folks on. I was gonna have a whole deal, make this a whole full episode, but instead I'm just gonna dive right into it after a work day here today. So much to talk about in the world of Jays basketball. It has been a very busy week. There has been a lot of news, there have been a lot of rumors, and we're going to talk about all of it because that's sort of the nice thing about being Dr. Chim Richards is nobody cares if I talk about rumors, or stuff that isn't confirmed or anything like that. So it would have been a lot more fun to do this before Fred King committed. But hey, we've got Fred King back. We're just going to kick right off with that. Genuinely, maybe shouldn't be a surprise as soon as the 5-5 thing came out. I think there should have been a world where this happened. This should have been something we maybe all could have been talking about a little bit more because the Marfo is always an option. Thankfully, we have the kind of program that people tend to want to come back to. Even guys like Jemiah Neal, who finish up their career here but still are regularly, making a trip to Omaha. Ashworth feels like he's always around. Tyshawn comes around. Mitch is a coach. Jehens was a coach. Like all these guys that come back to the program and it creates a good feeling. We'll just say that much. Like when guys seem like they want to come back to your program, right? It doesn't feel like, oh, I've had my time at Arkansas. I'm done with Arkansas now. Like that, just a for example kind of program. So Fred King's back, and any longtime listener of Dennis and the Doc or just my personal thoughts on him. Oh man, I haven't. Fred King is such a different kind of issue than Owen Freeman, right? And it was kind of the thing that became very apparent last year was if you would have asked us before the season who we would have rather had on the roster, it probably would have been like 99-1 in favor of Freeman, right? And then you go to the end of the season, maybe that much the other way. Probably not quite, but Fred King's problem was always that he just wasn't a very good basketball player. Like that's the easiest way to put it is he was a big body who occasionally did some pretty cool things. And every time it felt like he was breaking out, the next game he'd play 2 minutes and have 3 fouls, right? But at least you knew you would get effort from him, and whether Freeman's issue was that he wasn't showing effort or if he just, turns out his level was actually so much lower than most people were guessing. Of course, then you can also acknowledge all the Iowa fans basically said, yeah, this guy sucks, thank you for taking him off our hands. Like, all right, I guess they were right. Maybe we just didn't look close enough. Fred King went down a level. He went to, let's not pretend the Valley is like a low major. It's a true mid-major. And he was first team All-Valley, and he had a really good season. Averaged like 13-9, I think, which for him, huge improvement. He basically looked like the player that we all thought he could become. Let's make no bones about this. He's not a Big East caliber starting big. Still, and I get, that might be harsh because in theory he's had even more development this offseason. I hope. I hope he hasn't just kind of given up on playing. I assume he was trying to get a career somewhere in Europe or something like that. He's not a complete player. Like, you don't expect to see him like doing dribble handoffs anytime soon. He's gonna still be limited on offense to pick and roll and to collecting rebounds and putbacks and stuff like that. But that's totally fine with me because when you're looking at a situation where the options are either him or Trayvon Carter-Givens or Wesley Rosa, it's a blowout. And I mean a blowout. Folks at practice have been saying, like, Carter-Givens looks like he's coming along, like he might actually, get there at some point this season. That's great. But if the rumors are true, and it sure seems like they are, that Oswin is already a little banged up, it sounds like he's going to be back by the start of the season from something that I heard. He's still going to be missing a lot of practice, so he's not going to be 100% right from the get-go. You might say, I'd rather have Jason Green play the 5 than Fred, and that's not an unreasonable position to take. I think it's going to, vary game to game depending on the size of who they're guarding, the style of who they're guarding. Fred did improve last year. Like, I think objectively improved, because there's a difference between somebody dominating a lower quality of opponent but staying the same. I think he did actually make some steps. So that's important to consider. He's not going to have the size advantage that he did anymore, at least not to the same extent. But I'm glad to have him, and you can debate. I think there are going to be games right away where sometimes it's still going to be Green at the 5, sometimes it's going to be him at the 5. I don't know. There are definitely, and I mean definitely, this isn't, I don't think a stretch to say, there are weaker Power 5 programs that would have gone into this year with him as their starting or minute share 5. That's what this opens us up to, is the ability to not have to worry as much that if Oswin fouls 2 times in 15 minutes that we are toast. That either Green has to play the 5 for the rest of the game, or we have to try Carter Givens and Rosa. Now we have another option where nothing has to change, where we don't have to play any differently. And that's a big deal. I think that's a big piece to the floor of this team. I am not sure how much it affects our ceiling, because our ceiling is always going to be achieved with Oswin finding a way to play 30 minutes. I know there are knocks on him. I really like him. I tweeted it a while back, like, compare his sophomore year to Terrace Reed's sophomore year. They're similar in a lot of ways, and I think you could argue that Oswin's projects better if he can figure out how not to foul. So the ceiling to me is always, anyways, going to be achieved with Oswin playing as much of the 5 as possible. So I don't think adding Fred necessarily changes the ceiling. I think it does change the floor. Because imagine that world where Oswin misses some time this season. Even if he misses the first couple of weeks, we've got a few big games in there. Like, getting that Gonzaga win at home is going to be a big deal early in the season. If we can win at Kansas State, that's a big deal. Those 2 games are in the first, I think, week and a half, 2 weeks of the season. Or no, Gonzaga's later, Iowa's earlier. Yeah, in 1 week we play at the Octagon, and then we play Iowa and Des Moines. If you steal one or both of those games early in the season, that's huge. Those are going to be big quad 1 wins that would hopefully carry you all the way to Selection Sunday. So not having Oswin for those games and knowing that you're either playing, almost entirely Jason Green at the 5 as your best case, and then having to supplant him with Rosa or Carter Givens, who are completely new to Division I college basketball, that's tough. But now we throw Fred King in there, who... is he the best? Man, did he have some bad games. Man, did he have some times where he was virtually unplayable and Kalkbrenner was playing 38 minutes, not just because he could, but out of necessity. Yeah, he did. But he also had, that, you remember that stretch of games his sophomore year when Kalk had mono, and he came in and he, had 18 against Marquette or something like that. He has shown us he can play well against power conference Division I teams. Not often, at least back then. That's 3 years ago at this point. But at least he's shown us he can do it, whereas these other guys maybe can't, or maybe cannot yet is the best case, and maybe can't at all is the worst case. So knowing that, at the very least, the worst case scenario right now, and I'm knocking on every piece of wood I can find, is that we are going to go into the first month of the season with no worse than a Fred King, Jason Green pairing at the 5. Okay, we can work with that. Is it good? No, it's not good, right? It's not... If you told me that's our starting 5s before the season, yeah, I probably am still in this similar position of, we make the play-in games to the tournament, but not much more than that. Yeah, that to me would be a big difference than now saying, also add Oswin to that, and that's your ceiling. Okay, big difference. So like I said, Jason and Fred would not be great to start the season with just those 2, but I feel a hell of a lot better about it than if we did not have Fred. I think it gives us a chance in those games that we might not have had without him. We saw last year. I love Jason. I don't even hate him at the 5. I've been calling for that in sparing minutes for the past couple of years now. And I thought it did work in spells last year. we just couldn't have both things going wrong at the same time. If we would have fixed either the point guard position or the center position last year, it looks a lot better. I think not tournament better probably, but at least bubble better. Whereas really we were kind of completely out of it, you know? So that is the difference to me. That's the difference in adding Fred, is that we could be, you know, maybe all the way off the bubble to now like, no, I think we're at least going to be around the bubble. And if that sounds like maybe I'm lower on this team than some of you, I think that's becoming true. I'm certainly not the only one. I think this is actually going to be one of the wider ranges of fan opinion in terms of going into this year where we think this team is going to land. Because last year, despite the fact we all like to say we saw it coming, and to some degree I think a lot of us did, like, there were tweets all last offseason where it's like, well, you know, we're kind of counting on a lot of things to go right, a lot of guys to improve, you know, we're a little thin at a couple of positions. Like, we all basically said, yeah, we're counting on Freeman to basically play like 34 minutes a game. That's going to be tough. Point guard, Nick Graves wasn't exactly a point guard, but we're bringing him in anyways. We'll see how that goes. And we kind of glossed over it because, honestly, Dix was such a perfect fit. Freeman was such a perfect fit, and we all thought McAndrew was going to have a great season. None of those three things worked out the way we thought they would. Like, Dix was still good, and on a better team, I think he would have looked like a better player, was just being asked to do more than he probably could. That's fine. It is what it is. This offseason, we are having those realizations as the offseason goes on, but we're kind of addressing it within that context. We're going like, hey, last year, weren't we saying a lot of these same things? And didn't that not go so well? Okay, maybe I don't feel great about this team, but it's still good, right? Like, we got our portal guys in, and yeah, all right, they weren't the greatest portal guys, and well, there's at least one big concern with each of them, but we should still be good. The tournament expanded. We'll be fine. We'll be in the thick of the bubble, the portal, the play-in kind of seeds, right? There are some people in the fan base who still think we're going to finish third in the Big East. I am not one of them. I will get out on that right now. I do not know if that's... Like, is there a chance that happens? Of course there's a chance that happens. I will throw out there's a 0.25% chance we win the Big East, you know, like something like that. I'm never going to rule that out, but I don't see it happening. I think there's a very, very clear top two this year, and there, to me, is a clear-ish number 3 and 4, arguably 5 also, and none of those teams are us. For me, it's UConn and St. John's, and then Villanova, Xavier, Providence. Arguably Marquette above us too, but I think I'll leave us in the 6th spot for now. Then Marquette. Okay, that's... In previous years, finishing 6th in the Big East is a death sentence. It means you've had a terrible season the last couple of years. As we've discussed at length, I don't think we think that'll be the case this year. I think most of us think the Big East is going to get 5+ bids. That feels good to me, especially with the expanded tournament. I think 6 is pretty reasonable. I think the roster quality has improved relative to the rest of college basketball. I think last year we all saw it coming. We just thought we were going to be the 3rd team, right? We didn't think it was going to be Villanova. We thought it was going to be us finishing 3rd. And we're like, everybody else looks kind of bad, but hey, at least there's 3 good teams in the Big East. This year, I don't think that's the case at all. I think the national media recognizes it should be a bounce-back year. The quality of transfers brought in. The Big East brought in a lion's share of the top 125-ish prospects in the portal this year, like compared to other conferences in the nation. I will actually guarantee we over accumulated, I guess I'll say, especially like the 25 to 75 range. It feels like the Big East really dominated that range in the portal. So maybe missing out on some of the star power, although certainly there is some of it. Yeah, I think the Big East had a really good portal season, and it really needed one. Providence stepping up and Xavier stepping up are going to be very important to the conference this year. I don't think Marquette sucks this year. They will at the very least be poking around the tournament field. Nigel James is too good. Minneselle is okay. I like Frew for them. There's still a lot of spots to fill with Marquette that I'm not positive they get there, but they're going to be better. They're not going to be a team that's going to drag your metrics down this year, I don't think. Providence, really could be the one, they could be the fulcrum for the Big East this year. If Providence turns that squad into a top 25 team, which to me will entirely depend on how good Hodgson is, because they have enough talent, I think, to be a top 25 team. They're not going to get ranked there to start the year. There's too many unknowns. Dink Pate, if he gets eligible, I think that could be a top 25 team. And if it is, that will raise the profile of the conference, because I also think Villanova is going to be hanging right around there. Villanova is the interesting one because I actually don't love either of the guys they brought in out of the portal, even if they're both pretty highly ranked. Like Kwame Evans, some people had him as a top 10 portal guy. No, not for me. I watched him play in Detroit against the Jays. I watched him score 0 points in 2 tournament games that weekend. To me, he floats. To me, he is not a Big East kind of player. To me, he's not going to be there when it matters, when it counts. He's a talented player. I don't know how well that one's going to work out. If you ask me of their 2 ads, which one will be better, it will be Devin Royal, almost 100%. I have him being like a fringe, like second team all Big East guy, let's call it. He'll put up points. I think he's such a great, like he's a Miles Cale for me in terms of Kevin Willard players. I really like that comp. I think they play similarly. The kind of 3-and-D-ish wing, big, can move, athletic, can do multiple things for you. Really like that ad for them, actually. Even though I wouldn't necessarily say he's ranked as highly as some of these places would have him ranked. Their issue will be the guards. I'm not a Tyler Perkins guy. I don't think he was particularly good for them last year. Maybe he improves this year. We'll see what happens. Daryl Simons, the kid from, I think he's from St. Bona. He's small, but he'll agitate. Like, think Quincy McKnight. Like, honestly, it feels a lot like one of his Seton Hall teams. So that leads me to believe he is getting the players he wants. He's getting the archetypes he wants. And Luigi Swigo, the center, it's a big deal for them. This kid is a big deal. If he can play 25, 30 minutes out of the gate for them, this is a kid that was, pulling his name out of the draft, was maybe going to go to the draft. High ceiling for him. Could be a really good Nova team. Could struggle if Royal and Evans and their guards don't quite figure it out. Or Swigo, I think there is an eligibility concern with him. I'm not actually positive. Every other team can get their guys eligible, and we'll get to that, don't worry. I like Nova. Like Nova a little bit. Xavier. Really actually like Xavier. I think they did great business in terms of what they could probably get their hands on. This is what I mean about they wore out that second tier in the portal. These guys that are going to be contributors. It's just a matter of whether they can get anything more out of them. So Chance Westry is the guard. Big ad from UAB. We were reportedly in on him. I kind of believe that. We'll call him a volatile player. I think that's safe to say. So it'll be a question of whether they can rein him in. Michael Nwoku at the center, I think, is fantastic for them. That is a big body. That just screams Big East, down and dirty center to me. I think that's a great ad. They've added some shooters. Blanking on the guy's name right now from A&M. Dominguez, good shooter. True Washington, good ball player, good guard, can play a couple of positions. So I like Xavier. These are all teams I like better than us, unfortunately. Except Marquette, probably. That one will be close. Our problems are star power is number one. Star power for me is the biggest thing that we should have been concerned about last season, and we are definitely concerned about going into this season, because hopefully we learned our lesson that it is very hard to win without somebody drawing the defense's attention. Dix was kind of that guy for us by the end of the year. You really kind of need 2, though. You need a star and a gravity guy. So hopefully, the hope has always been, and was last year, that Jackson McAndrew finally has the development that we all know he can do and are just waiting to see if he actually does. Because, I mean, there's a reason he was ranked as highly as he was. There's a reason there's excitement about him. There's a reason the national guys aren't giving up on him. They're still looking at him like a, potential all-conference guy for this year. He's 6'10", arguably bigger than that. There are people saying he looks huge this year. He shoots the fucking shit out of the ball when he's free. Can he attack? Can he attack a defense and be something more than a knockdown shooter? That's the question. I think this team will struggle if he is not more than that. Because I'll be honest, like a lot of people were saying like, oh, there were signs of improvement last year. I don't really recall seeing them. At least not in his offensive game. The only thing I remembered about him is it seemed like he was a little more capable of playing one-on-one defense. And I mean a little bit more, because you really just never had to see it with Kalkbrenner back there. So there was some of that in the first couple of weeks of that season. Like, halftime of the Gonzaga game, I think we got to remember, like, how good we all felt in that moment at halftime at the Kennel, saying, like, okay, that looked kind of like what we think this team might be able to do this year. That wasn't so bad. It had some hiccups, but we were right in that game. And then, obviously, we weren't. But one of those things was, okay, some of these guys can defend one-on-one. We just didn't know because we didn't see a lot of it. So how much of it is, did he really improve, or is it just maybe he wasn't a terrible one-on-one defender, but it didn't matter? I don't know. He's still going to have very few players in the conference that he can match up with. And that's also going to be the problem for Green on the wings. When we are playing both of them and Oswin at the same time, we are slow. And I don't mean slow in terms of like we won't be able to get in transition, because we might, depending on the guard mix-up at the time, we might be able to. And like even Oswin isn't incapable of that. But we're big and kind of lumbering, right? We're not going to be able to guard like athletic wings. There's going to be matchups. Like Kamenia, McAndrew, like that's probably fine. Guarding like Yasufu is going to be a little more difficult. Guarding teams that play more of like three true guards is going to be difficult. Because like who's guarding, let's say they roll out like 6 foot, 6'1", and 6'4", like arguably we could at times this year. If we ran like BJ Davis, Bug Edwards, and Austin Swartz all at the same time, or even Enos and Swartz at the same time. Enos is small too. Who would Jason Green guard? Is he guarding the 4? McAndrew's guarding the smaller, quicker 3? Maybe. That's tough. How much of it is going to be us forcing the other team to play a certain style versus them dictating to us how we're going to do our rotations this year? Because in theory, I don't think it's a stretch to say it seems to be everyone from practice saying this, last week they finally ran what looked like a true first team, and it was Davis, Enos, Green, McAndrew, and Oswin. So we think our best version of our team, and I certainly agree with it, is Green, McAndrew, and Oswin all on the floor at the same time. Okay, so are we going to force other teams to adapt to that, or are we going to pick out of it to adapt to those teams? That is the question. Maybe neither. Maybe you just roll with it, and you hope, either Green or McAndrew can do the lateral quickness, all the Patino buzzwords to stay with these kind of guys. And maybe it just works. Maybe it becomes a really tough lineup to shoot over, and we are actually able to impose our will on the boards against teams like this. Or what I think is more likely going to happen is we're going to get stuck in these mismatches. One of Green or McAndrew isn't going to be able to run around with some of these guards, and we're going to have to change our personnel based on that. Fortunately, Huss seems to be prepared to do that, because that, to me, is why we have a glut of guards, is if you are preparing to play some of them at the 3. What does that mean? So we were talking about McAndrew, developing, taking a step star power. What does that mean for Hudson Greer? Hudson Greer is, I think, maybe the most in danger of not having a role on this team, despite everyone thinking he needs to. I said this a couple of years about Mason Miller, and the reason I was right about it, like, I can't take full credit because he just all of a sudden started shooting like 12%. That's not, so me saying I didn't know if he necessarily fit in the team the same way without guys like Baylor and Trey, like, yeah, he might have fit just fine if he could shoot the fucking ball. This worries me a little bit just because Greer doesn't have a full bag. He's young, and maybe that develops, but right now he is essentially a spot-up shooter and a rebounder who can cut for the occasional dunk. He's not like a on-ball slashing wing. He's not a passer. He's not much of a defender, if at all. So that really limits what he's able to do on the floor and who he's able to guard and how we're able to match him up against other teams. Most teams are prepared to guard a 6'6" wing who can only shoot, right? or at least prepared to systematically deal with that. Having him out there with McAndrew, if both of them, turn into 39-40% shooters this year, then great. Then there's a world where you could have those two guys out there and really space the floor and create space for our guards, and I think that's the ideal situation. But if he looks rough shooting the ball early in the season, if he's shooting at like a 32% clip, there's not going to be much place for him in the team. Because if we're already big and we're already rebounding with Green, McAndrew, and Oswin, in theory, rebounding should not be a huge issue on this year's team. We'll see. But in theory, we should be better positioned to rebound this year than last year. That's not saying much. So if he doesn't have to be out there for his rebounding, and I don't think there's a world where he can ever play the two just because he doesn't have the ball handling for it, that is going to create guys like Swartz, guys like even maybe like Cottrell Harmon, potentially Enos or Bug coming down to play a little bit of three. And maybe seeing Green spelling Jackson at the 4 in the minutes where he's not playing there, or even like Trout, however that might work. Because if we need to guard a smaller team, and we don't feel like we can do it with Jason, Hudson, or Jackson, or any combination of those two on the floor at the same time, with Oswin, then it's going to have to be 3 guard a little bit more often. And I think Huss is preparing for that. Because, I'm just going to say, we don't have a star guard on this team entering the season, and that's a really tough place to be. We don't have a lead guard. It seems like it's going to become Enos very quickly. And we may have, there are people saying we've struck gold here. And we'll see, because a lot of signs point to that he's going to be able to do a lot of things for us. There are also a lot of signs to maybe worry about that. He's a 3-point volume shooter, and that's where his points come from. 3-point volume is very hard to come by when you're a 6'1" guard in the Big East that can't blow past anybody. Especially if he's going to be asked to be on ball a lot, which it sounds like it is. Huss, from everything I'm hearing out of these practices, and thank you to the guys that have been on like Jay's Classic or like Blue Jays at the Beat or the Jacob Padilla podcast, like listening to these guys getting their practice insights. Huss is basically saying, take the ball up. If you're a guard, take the ball up. Get the offense moving. And I don't mind that. But if it's going to create a situation where Enos is the initiator a little bit more often, that's going to take away the thing he's strongest at, which is volume threes, getting pass and shoot threes, catch and shoot threes, getting, moving off of a screen threes, stuff like that. So that might take away the thing that gets him to his point values the most often. So is he then going to be able to have that kind of star power? Because you're not a star if you're averaging 10 points a game, right? Like, that's a really good role guy, right? Which is fine. But then again, then is there a star on this team? And is there a world where this team can succeed without one? Without, a true, breakout kind of player? It's hard. Not a lot of teams are able to do it that way, without any guy being considered, a near all-conference player. There's a world where that's the world we're living in this year, so I think they're preparing for that. Swartz is interesting also in this regard because if it's true that Enos is basically our lead guard right now, and he's leading practices, he's looking the most impressive, he's doing a lot of the scoring, he's taking a lot of the shots, Swartz's position in theory would be right behind him at the 2. He, I think, would be first in line for if somebody's stepping down to the 3 just because he's a little bit bigger. He can do things that maybe other guys on this team can't do. It sounds like if we need a bucket, it's going to be Enos, but Swartz showed us he's capable of that. He's capable of threes. He's capable of putting pressure on the defense. He doesn't blow by a lot of guys, but he's able to create his own shot. Oh, I didn't even really finish up on Enos because there are concerns with both of these guys, and the concerns are how purple were their purple patches, How much of an illusion were their best moments? Enos was against weaker competition, and then he gets to the tournament game against Louisville. I think he scored 3 points and shot 1 for 11 from 3. That happens to guys in the tournament. He's probably going to be the single most susceptible to blowing up in a tournament game because he's a volume shooter and the ball is different. It's starting to be a thing where everyone's starting to catch on to, oh yeah, good shooters stop shooting good in the tournament because the ball is so fucking different and overinflated and whatever. So he is maybe the one guy you could have put all 300 and oh boy, 80 times 5 4. Oh my god, sorry. I'm trying to like do this math really quickly. Some like 400 guys who are in the tournament field. Fuck. 340? 340 guys. 68 times 5. Yeah, 340. That was not as hard as I made it seem. Guys in the tournament. You could have argued he is the number 300 starters. 5 starters. Fucking, you get my point. You could argue he is the single one that would be pointed at and be like, you are going to have the hardest time adapting to the tournament ball. And go figure, he scores 3 points in a loss. Got up 11 shots, didn't do much else, and that was a rough game for USF. Against a decent team, granted, like they were not favored to win that game, but they were a trendy upset. Were they favored by they took a lot of money in that game. Regardless, the 11 against a 6, whatever. So he has that area where it's like, well, shit, how much of it is just he was playing well for a bit or playing well against bad teams? Swartz has that same kind of concern, right? Swartz is, man, he couldn't find the floor for the first half of the season. That he has this explosive, like, second third of the season, right? Where he looks like one of the best players in the country. Like, you're almost expecting him to put up 24 points a night. He's leading us to dominating Marquette, where he's shooting the lights out at Cintas like literally no one has ever done. Biggest road win in Cintas history. And then down the stretch of the season, like, hey, he's still doing some things, but he's not great. Is he a little banged up? It sounded like. Whatever. He just wasn't the same like level of impact at the end of the season. Did teams just finally get a scout on him? What happened there? Was the rest of the team just too ineffective to help him out? There is a world where Swartz just is kind of a version of the player he was in the middle third of that season, where it's kind of like a Marcus Foster situation, and that's maybe his best comp when things are going well. Just going to make shots, going to score points, and yeah, maybe a liability on defense. Hopefully he improves on that, because everyone has said there is that profile in him. Like in high school, he projected as a decent defender. And Miami, it obviously didn't fucking matter, so I almost don't care about what he did there. And then he was not good last year. He was a minus defender last year. Will it help now that we have rim protection behind him? Maybe. So can he be that guy? Because I think he is being talked about arguably the least out of anyone on this roster going into the season. And I'm not the only one who's noticed that either, but he could be our best player. Like, there is a world where that is the case. Would any, in the middle stretch of, after the Marquette game last year, if I told you next year Austin Swartz is our best player, would you have got, like, you probably would have been skeptical, but at the same time, like, I'm seeing it. It's happening in front of my eyes. Like half the guys on our roster will never have one game, let alone 2, as good as he had in that stretch of the season. So maybe he is just going to be that guy, and maybe he forces us to play a 3-guard lineup a little bit more often, because how do you not have him and Enos on the floor at the same time? And if you have to have those two on the floor at the same time, and maybe you're a little less worried about who's bringing the ball up, what happens to BJ Davis then? Because BJ Davis is the number one concern for me entering this season, and it's weird to be concerned about a player who's kind of got the Division I like proof of concept as much as he does, because like I think we know what we're gonna get from him. If he starts every game at the 1 and plays 15 minutes, plays 25 minutes, he's gonna score 9 or 10 points, have 2 or 3 assists, and probably 4 or 5 rebounds. Not even 3. We'll call it 3 or 4 rebounds. He'll have like a steal and a half per game, probably. Like good defense. Like I think you could almost pen him in for that this season, if that's going to be his role. Is that good enough? That's the question, and it's the assists that everyone's going to look at first. We saw what happens last year when you don't have a guy who is capable of stimulating offense. And lo and behold, he's coming from another program where they don't do much of that. There are a lot of similarities to the Nick Graves situation, coming from a team that had a bad offense, coming from a team that did not move the ball like we want to move the ball. And he's being brought in to be our primary ball handler. Tricky, because he's objectively, I think a better player than Nick Graves. I think what he showed playing at San Diego State versus what Graves showed playing at Charlotte is enough for me to say he is a better player than Nick Graves. He can do a few more things than Graves. That's not the most confident I've ever been about saying something like that, though. There's a world where they are very similar dudes, with very similar makeup, very similar profiles, even very similar play styles. Davis obviously a better defender, though, and that will make a difference. And you start to get concerned about, like, okay, we're walking into the same issue again. We don't have a ball handler on this roster. BJ Davis is not a ball handler. BJ Davis is a guard. In maybe the truest sense of that, like, if he was 3 inches, 4 inches taller, he would be a 2, no questions asked, in my mind. He would be a, like, almost prototypical, like, college slashing, can score at 3 levels 2. But he's not, because he's not tall enough, right? Like, he's a 1. He's being brought in to play the 1. And as it stood a week ago, we did not have a true primary, pure, however you want to define it, point guard on the roster. Because your number 2 option is Cottrell Harmon, who, based on commentary from certain important figures in Creighton history, might have looked like the best player on our roster at a practice or 2. And I don't know if we should be concerned or feel good about that. Actually, I do know, and we should be concerned about that. It might be a good thing, but we should definitely be concerned about that. For those of you who don't know what I was talking about, there were some rumors that made their way around that the famous Bruce Rasmussen, legendary athletic director, you could argue, I think, one of the greatest athletic directors of all time, for what he was able to do at Creighton, especially for the men's basketball program, but really for the whole thing that's in the Big East. This is, I'll just preface this, because, like, second-hand, third-hand information here. This is rumors, could be bullshit. Apparently he went to a practice and was none too pleased about the state of the team, the state of our spending, or the current roster. Thinks we're behind compared to the rest of the conference, that we didn't spend enough compared to the rest of the conference, and that the best player apparently on our team is Cottrell Harmon. And it was not said in what I would think would be an optimistic tone based on the way this information was conveyed to me. Could be not true at all. This could be completely made up, whatever. If true, number 1, I'd be very excited to see what Cottrell looks like this year. And I think I am anyways, because honestly, we've kind of only heard good things about him. It's really just going to be a matter of how fast he adapts and us figuring out what his best role is. But obviously that would worry me about the rest of the team. And that would maybe lean into my thinking that we don't have stars. And that the reason a guy like Enos might be separating himself in practice is because he's not playing against a very good team. So that's my worry there. Back to Cottrell. Not a true point guard. Probably played a lot of it and will be expected to play some of it. But similarly to the way, like the comp from him that Max said, that people who watch him say that, I think even Huss said, he's Trey Alexander 2.0. Like, he is another prototype of he was built in the mold of Trey Alexander. Where Trey came in and it was the same thing, like kind of a 1, kind of a 2. Really, we think your future is going to be better as a 2. But that end of his freshman year, we needed him to put the ball in his hands. He was able to do it. He did a pretty good job of it. That's, I think, where he's going to be at. And I think this year, prior to the news of a week ago, I would have expected the lion's share of his minutes to come at the 1, sparing Davis. And if you would have told me at some point in Big East play, Cottrell takes over as the starter, BJ gets relegated to the bench, I would have absolutely believed you. I might even think that was, most likely to happen. I'm pretty high on Cottrell, and a lot of people are too. But, again, not a true ball handler, not a true, pass and stimulate the offense point guard. So we didn't have one on the roster. And it felt, again, very similar to last year, where it's like, did we just upgrade our Ty Davis? Like, is that all that happened? Like, we still don't have a point guard, but the guy who we can turn to if things go bad is at least way better. So you've got all that. And I don't think anyone actually thought we were going to go out and add a point guard. Because surely between those two guys, you figure your ideal scenario for this year would be something like Davis playing like 20 to 25 minutes, Cottrell playing like 12 to 15 or something in there, enough to get his feet wet. So there's not a ton there left to go around. And then we bring in Brody Robinson. So he is a 5'11", if that, true point guard from Oakland, Detroit, Oakland. Bounced around a couple of places, ended up there. First team All-Horizon last year, 17 points a game and like 6.7 assists, I think is the exact number, which was top 15 among qualified guys in the country or something like that. High assist rate. Okay, he's a shooter, like he shoots the shit out of it to some degree. I think he was only a 36-37% shooter, but on 200 attempts. So he's taking, over 6 attempts per game. So he's a volume shooter. Everything I've seen, he takes a lot of tough shots because he's usually the guy that winds up with the ball in his hands. People are comparing him to Stephen Ashworth. Like some national people are saying, like, that's your new Stephen Ashworth. There's an interesting dichotomy that's happening here. Because everything you look at in Robinson's numbers, like, yeah, he should be a pretty decent player. He's a decent little player. And Creighton fans are like, yeah, great. That'll look good on the bench. We can play him if we need him. Hopefully we don't need him. That's, I think, the attitude we're all taking toward it. And then we've got the national folks who are like, wow, this completely changes my opinion of Creighton's build this year. This, to me, like, fills out their roster. This brings them back into my circle of trust. Like, people are saying these things. And we're sitting here, we're like, are you sure? The kid's like 4'7". Like, is he going to be able to play in the Big East? Are we sure? Oh, well, Stephen Ashworth did. I'm like, I don't think we understand how much of a unicorn Stephen Ashworth was. And I don't think we remember necessarily how bad his first semester was. Like, bad is maybe a stretch. But there were people calling for him to be benched. Like, a not insignificant portion of the fan base at some point. He had a very rough start to his Creighton career. So clearly it's not easy to come in, even as a guy who, you respect the basketball IQ of as much as Stephen Ashworth, and just get into the Creighton system from go. Because as much as we want to say, like, oh, it's Huss, it's a different system, Huss is going to run the Creighton offense. Huss built one of the best Creighton offenses in history. One of the best college offenses. And the death lineup in 2019-20, the Zagorowski, Tyshawn, Mitch, Mahoney, and DJ lineup is one of the best, I think, 100 lineups ever in college basketball. I think it might even be way higher than that. It was the best 5-man lineup that season by, I think, a comfortable margin in terms of efficiency. It's still, that was Huss. So this is still going to be a Creighton offense. Everything he said is, let it fly is staying, we're making defensive changes. And everything would suggest you have to believe him when he says that, because that's everything we're hearing out of practice, that's everything we're hearing from the coaching staff, that's everything we're hearing from the players. So we are still going to be getting one of these point guards up to speed, all of these point guards up to speed with the Creighton offense. This kid is a fifth year, and he now has 2 months to learn the system if he wants to contribute at the start of this season. I don't think that's going to happen. To me, this is just, I'm agreeing with all the Jays fans where it's like, yeah, decent depth add. He could play some real minutes for us this year, and disagreeing with the national media saying, oh, this is going to be a guy. This is going to be your starting point guard. Like, there are people saying his portal projection is high major starter. And this is a 5-5 guy. So that's the only reason there wasn't a blitz for him in the previous portal era, is this is a guy who got cleared with an injunction. So that's why he's available to us, and it doesn't seem like it was a very big move. Is it would have seemed that way if it happened 4 months ago? That's kind of the way these people are talking about it. I don't buy it. I don't necessarily know why I don't buy it, but I don't buy it. Mostly I think it's just he's too small. If you told me all this exact same stuff about this kid, but he was 6'3", I'd probably be more excited about it. He's very small. He is Stephen Ashworth small. Supposedly smaller, but I don't know if I buy that. A lot of his, I watched some of his tape. A lot of his film is shots that I think are going to get swatted out of the fucking gym in the Big East. Anything from inside the perimeter. And, okay, yeah, it looks like he does have a heck of a shot on it. And it does look like he'll be able to maybe not have the full Ashworth range, but he's going to have some. So he's, I can see how he contributes to this roster. I can see the reasons for bringing him on. I do not see him being a Big East starter. And I think if he is, that means we're really, really concerned about what we're seeing at the point guard spot so far. If this was a guy we actually had to go in and buy, and teams were competing against us for him because there are teams that think he's a high major starter, that concerns me about what we think about our guard situation right now. It would make me feel better about him, and maybe there actually is something here, because I guess I can't rule that out. Like, the dude did produce last year in a very weak conference, but he did produce. And I guess the Horizon isn't the worst one out there. Like, would you say his numbers look better than Blake Harper's? Yeah, I actually would, because the Horizon's better than the MEAC. So them having similar numbers, but Robinson clearly he can pass the ball. Clearly he can stimulate offense. He's still got to learn ours. So there's this glut, even at the point guard position, where despite the fact that only one of them is a point guard, like a true point guard, there are 3 guys there, and I think you could justify any of them having the 10 to 15 minute role. Right? So maybe you can't justify Robinson having the lion's share of the role. There are 5 guys I think you could tell me wind up taking the ball up most often in a game. BJ Davis is the most likely, and I think he will be the most times to take the ball up on game day 1 against, Kansas City? Or even the scrimmage, I guess, so Iowa State. Cottrell Harmon, Brody Robinson, Wes Enos, and even Austin Swartz. I think, and I haven't even mentioned Edwards yet, so I'll get to him too. Those are 5 guys who I think you could make a legitimate argument could all have a game this season where they take the ball up more often than anyone else. Is that I'm going to say the D word. I'm going to say the D word. Is that depth? Or is that a concerning lack of a dominant role player? Like a dominant star in a role? I'm going to keep harping on this. It is my biggest concern heading into this season, is if you're fucking around with rotations too much and you're not letting guys establish themselves in a role because you're too worried about if they're even good enough for it, it just never seems like that goes well. And these big minutes sharing, almost platoon changes by position, it just doesn't work that often. It works if you're a Duke and you're running 10 deep with 5-star talent, but it's not going to work for us, most likely. So my concern is we are bringing these guards in because we don't think that any of them can be the dominant player in that role. So we need to have options there. Alternatively, we feel really great about a couple of them, and we're just stacking up guys that we can add because why not? That is a very real possibility too. It's the one that I hope is correct, because that's the one that gets us somewhere this season. The one where we're stuck in a rotation to figure out who our best players are, that wastes a lot of the season. We saw it happen last year, where it didn't feel like we got to our best 5. I mean, you could argue what we found at the end of the season with the Fedor and Dix and Swartz and all them playing at the same time. Or was it even Swartz? I think he went back to the bench. Right, all those guys playing at the same time. I think it was Trout and Green and Graves started. I don't know. But whatever that 5 was we got to at the end of the season, you could say was our best. I think we wasted the whole season trying to figure out a best 5 that never came to us. And I think that could happen again this year. Or BJ Davis just is the guy we're hoping for, and he can get to 4.5 assists a game and Enos is a 2, and Green and McAndrew figure out how to guard the wings, and Oswin plays most of the minutes at the 5. And there you go. And there's your starting 5, and we ride with it for most of the season. I said before last year that I thought more than 8 guys would start a game for, or 8 or more, I think I said, would start a game for Creighton. And, oh, yeah, it was 10. So, yeah, it was more than that, and it wasn't just injuries. Was it 10? It might have been, 10 or 11. It was a lot. It was a lot more than it should be. I have that same fear for this year's team. If you told me BJ Davis starts a game, 100%. Wes Enos starts a game, 100%. Jason Green starts a game, 100%. Jackson McAndrew starts a game, 100%. Oswin starts a game, as long as he's not hurt, 100%. Give me Cottrell Harmon starts a game. I would probably say yes. I think he will. That's the tricky one, just because he's a freshman. And if they go with Enos next, so I would say maybe. Does Austin Swartz start a game? I will say yes. I think he will start a game at some point this season, whether it's because of an injury, because Enos moves to the 1, he moves to the 2, whether there's a game where, maybe Oswin's hurt, we're starting Green at the 5, he's playing the 3. So I will say yes. Hudson Greer starts a game. Maybe, because maybe he's just at some point going to develop and be favored at the 3, and we work something out there. Maybe. Fred King starts a game. Looking pretty likely at this stage. Oswin already hurt, and while they're saying he could be back by November to me means you're fully healthy maybe a few weeks into November. So I'd feel pretty good about that. We're up to possibly 8 already. Brody Robinson is a possible 9. Do I think Bug Edwards gets a start this year? I don't. I think there's really no redshirting anymore, but I would think there's a better chance that he basically redshirts. Trout, probably not. So 8 or 9 guys, again, that I'm like, yeah, you could start. Whereas, even as recently as 2 years ago, it's like, there's 5 guys, maybe 6. Right? Like, unless there's injuries, there's 5 guys. We have 5 guys. And that's who we're gonna run them till the wheels fall off. But you know exactly what you're gonna get. And yeah, McDermott talked about, we'd love to be more like this Auburn team where they can just bring in a new platoon of guards and run you off the boards and do all these things. And yeah, that's great if you can get it. Most teams can't get it. Most teams just cannot do it. So would I rather have 5 players that I'm completely confident in than rotating between, 4 positions worth of players, 8 guys who I, might have a good day or might not? I'd rather have the 5 guys and just run out of steam. So, I don't know. It's a matter of whether they're adding these guys for depth, positive depth, or for essentially negative depth where you're hoping one of them becomes the starter. If you're hoping Brody Robinson can take over as the starter, I'm worried. If you're adding him because why not add another good player in case we need, to add a 3-point shooter for a specific scenario, like if he's essentially like a special teams guy, awesome, great. That's great, and it makes me feel good about the team. I just think it's more likely to be the first one. I think it's a little more likely to be the first one. Bug Edwards is interesting. Guys are talking about him coming out of practices ridiculously fast. Like, him and Hudson, those two are probably in the contention for best athlete on the team. We don't know much about him. It's another concern here where you've just got to trust the coaching staff to evaluate him, because he couldn't play on TCU last year, which isn't the end of the world as a freshman. That TCU team was actually pretty good. They were pretty deep with established high major play. Like Brock Harding coming off the bench, basically in the same role he had at Iowa for a couple of years. So all right, clearly they were a good team and they had guys they could rely on. So if you just can't crack that rotation as a freshman, I don't think that says that much about you. So he was recruited to be a high major player, and he might very well be, or he might need a year or two. We don't know. If you told me what guy I think is most likely to transfer out next year, it's probably him. It's probably him, right? As he just seems like he's gonna get odd man outed in this rotation. But maybe not. I have a feeling we're having a pretty open competition for spots here. And the other problem is I don't know if his best position is a 1 or a 2, because obviously in sparing minutes at TCU, couldn't really tell. He shot 43% from 3 or something like that, but it was on, I think, 17 attempts. He didn't play a whole lot. So there's not much to tell with him. Is he a good shooter? Like, well, the data says yes, but, it's also such a small sample size, it doesn't mean anything. Can he pass? Like, well, I don't know. Does it matter if he was playing the 1 or the 2 in mop-up minutes against, UTRGV last year? No, it really doesn't. So he's going to be a wait and see. I'm intrigued though, because he was a highly rated recruit, high school teammate with Hudson. So maybe he sticks around for that reason. If he plays this, he's the Austin Swartz of this season. You see what happens. His role was small last year. He good recruit, can shoot, can pass, and you just see what happens. Maybe he fits into this team somewhere. Maybe he literally doesn't play a minute in Big East play. I would not be surprised with either of those things happening. Could be like a defensive disruptor, could be a, steals and breakout kind of guy, and maybe you just find he has to play minutes in a game. Could happen. Because the other thing is, there's no guards you have to promise minutes to. There's no Trey Alexander out there where it's like, well, he's playing 34 minutes, so who wants the other 6, No, it's, dude, if BJ Davis, if we get to halfway through the season and he's not performing, he'll be seeing the bench. Enos is maybe the most likely to get, some kind of, not like a promise, because I frankly don't think we're doing that. But I don't really see him dropping below, 18 to 20 minutes a game. He's the only one. We've already proven as a program, Huss was here last year. Swartz rode the bench. If he's not performing, he'll ride the bench. Hudson, I think he's a little bit more of Huss's guy, it seemed like, and that's kind of the reason he's back here. But again, we can't live in this world where we're going to be afraid to lose him, so we have to play him if he's not up to snuff right away. I think he'll ride the bench if he has to ride the bench. The only ones who I think are going to get latitude are Green and McAndrew. And Jason, it's an interesting thing because while I think he's a great player and he's a great glue guy, if it makes more sense to have him playing a 10 to 15 minute a game role, I'm not sure they won't do that. They shouldn't let that get in the way of building the best team. And if I don't know, he keeps surprising me though. That's the thing. He keeps surprising me because every time we think he's kind of getting to his ceiling of who he can be as a player, yeah, there's more in there. There's more in there. And he keeps showing us there's more in there and that there's something else he can do. He hasn't gotten a chance to really focus on being the best version of himself, as corny as that sounds, because he's always been trying to be what the team needs him to be, and that's great. You love having that. All right, we need you to be a star this year if you can. And if you can't, we might have to let somebody else have a go at it. So I hope we have a healthy Oswin and King, and he can just focus on playing the 3 or the 4 and, shooting a little bit better. He showed a little bit of it last year. Inside game, slashing. It was was it him in the Louisville game that I was really impressed by? I think it was. Yeah, it was, actually, because it was the 2 years ago tournament game, the Louisville game. Him and McAndrew did a bunch of things in that game that I hadn't seen them do all season. And that was playing inside, that was cutting, doing creative things with the ball. They showed they could do it in the right offense. Then Green looked really good against Janai Broome in the next round against Auburn. So it showed he can do these things. Then last season he basically has to he becomes the team's Atlas, right? Throw the burden of the earth of this team onto him, and he will struggle with it, and he will do his damnedest to hold it up with one good fucking shoulder. So even then he showed improvement from the previous year, and it's a question of, can he do it again, but going back to the other role? That's the shit of it for him, is it's just been oscillating between roles, and neither of them is really who he is. He's a 4. He is a 4. And he's either going to have to kind of play the 3 or the 5. Because McAndrew's going to play the 4. I would consider McAndrew more of the 3 and him more of the 4, but it depends, you're mostly just going to arrange that by height. It doesn't really matter because not a lot of coaches will give a shit that much about that. Some will, but I don't know. So you have that with Jason too, and I think he will still be reliable enough where he's playing 25 minutes a game. McAndrew, God help us, he needs to be playing 30 and contributing at a high level. he needs to be an all-conference player for this team to reach anything that even remotely looks like its ceiling. If you tell me that at the end of this season, we have Wes Enos and Jackson McAndrew on the second team, and we have a player, third team or honorable mention All Big East, I will think that we have had a pretty good season. If you tell me that Jason Green is like second team All Big East and somebody else is like honorable mention, I will be very concerned about the season that we've just had. Because he is going to look his best when there is a lot of load placed on him, and that's not necessarily good for the team. When he is at his best, he is a role player, and he is really fucking good at it. And we need him to be a star in that role. If he is like a 10 and 8 guy, that's maybe putting too much of a burden on it. We'll call him like a 10 and 6 guy, playing good defense. I don't know. Because like even I say that, and then it's like, that's maybe not the best he can do. We'll see. We'll see what he comes back with this year. It could be tricky to integrate him correctly, is I guess the thing I'm struggling with. So all of that, and I guess there are other things still to get to. So we were supposed to, this is the full roster now. This is it. Barring Fred King or Brody Robinson not getting eligible, which could still happen because they're both fifth-year guys. I think Robinson is pretty clear and King has this injunction. So it's going to get appealed. I think the NCAA just actually won an appeal for one of these injunctions. I don't know if it was the one he was involved with. Like, it happened right before I started taping this. So there's still a concern, I think, with both of those guys to some degree. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But the reason this is the full roster and I haven't talked about Marco and Fodes Odata yet is because he's not coming. The reports, it sounds like, were premature, that actually he hadn't committed in the sense that, it was a done deal and paperwork was being signed, because he came to Omaha with the intention of committing here, but we had to basically do our due diligence and say, can we get him cleared? And the conclusion that it seems was arrived at is no. And I don't know what the fuck we're doing wrong. I don't know what's happening where we can't get our international guys eligible without a fight, and everyone else can. So, here, like, it starts with Fedor. And it's that quote, there's the quote from Moneyball, like, they're talking, like, John Henry's talking to Billy Beane, and he says, like, the first guy through the wall always gets bloody. But it creates the opening for everybody else. You burst through the wall first, and it beats you up for doing it, but now everybody else does it. That's, cool when you're talking about, like, baseball analytics and stuff, and they just mock the guy for it. Like, we couldn't get Fedor eligible because he was kind of one of the first guys who was really going to break that mold open. And it's like the what have I done like effect of it now, where the whole world, everyone was going to anyways. But because he was seen as a game breaker, and if you don't believe me, go back and look at like media articles when we signed him. Go look at like the Reddit when we signed him. People thought we were breaking college basketball. People thought it made us like legitimate title contenders just to have him. And you would be forgiven for saying that because he was in the draft. NBA guys were after him. You had this Field of 68 podcast, which got shared around a lot more than I feel like those usually do, where it was Terrence Oglesby and Doster, I think. But Oglesby was talking about Fedor and watching him in the Bundesliga. I think, was it the Bundesliga or was it the whatever the big Europa League is? Euro League, Eurobasket, that's what it is. And he was saying, like, this guy is too good to be playing college basketball. This guy is going to break college basketball. He should not get eligible. This is a disgrace. He said that. And other people echoed those sentiments. Despite the fact he wasn't necessarily the first Euro player that came over. He was just the first one that was going to really have an impact. They were all so sure of this. And don't even give me that part of it is because he was coming to Creighton. And that can't be allowed. Well, it turns out, he wasn't a game breaker, or at least not in the time that we found him. Has he found a team yet? I don't think he's found a team yet. There were rumors he was trying to go to Butler, or Butler wanted him, or something like that. I don't think that ever actually materialized. To my understanding, he doesn't have a place to play basketball next year. And he can't come back now because we've filled our roster. And they put him through 2, like, humiliation ritual, like, will you get eligible? Oh, we'll make you eligible on a random, like, December Wednesday or something like that. Just put us through the fucking ringer to get this guy eligible, and then he averages, like, 4 points a game in his career. Fucking hell. When everyone, like, Illinois' team is practically the Croatian national team at this point, and we can't get one fucking guy eligible who wasn't even that good. Not that we didn't know that, because fucking everyone tells us now. But, like, forgive us for believing that when the whole world was telling us this guy was so good he was going to break college basketball. What luck with that. Like, all the people who said Sam Hoiberg was better than him, like, I will, even though the outcome could not have possibly gone any more the other way, I will still say we were right on our side at the time, and it just became an impossible outcome based on that. I don't know. That's Cope. That's big Cope. I don't know. It didn't seem... Whatever. But anyways, it's happening again. Marco Fodzodata, player out of France, point guard-ish, another like point guard-ish kind of guy. Played there a little bit for France. Probably wouldn't have had the ball handling skills to do it over here. Looked really good in the U21 tournament this summer. And by really good, I mean like he played well against Team USA. Picked J.J. Mandequit's pocket a couple of times. You may remember that name. We recruited him pretty hard. He's at Arizona now for some godforsaken reason. I imagine we recruited him again this year, but maybe not. But yeah, he's a defensive monster, just a disruptor. The offense would have taken a year or two to fill out. So I don't know that he would have necessarily had a huge role on this team. So actually there will be an interesting discussion, I guess, that'll take place now between who would have had a bigger impact on this team, him or Brody Robinson. That'll be fun to explore throughout the season. But he would have been like another big European prospect. Not that Conan and Dimitrovic weren't, and look how that turned out. But, other teams get these guys to succeed, so surely we would have gotten one of them to turn out good eventually. But we are not going to get him. We have now filled the roster without him. Presumably whatever we discovered in that meeting was enough for us to say it's not worth the attempt. It's not worth rostering him just to find out that he can't play and having to lug around, essentially one less player all season. Or, not having the flexibility by the time he's officially declared an whatever the reason may be. And it's like fine if we pivoted and Robinson, and at the very least a good pivot, if not like an actual impact player. Again, we'll see what happens there. But who the fuck is managing our international players, and why can we not seem to get any? Who did we piss off at NCAA headquarters? Like, at the very least, I think you have to. I'm not entitled to the answer, but like, who is handling our internationals? And why can we not do what everyone else in the country can do and get these guys eligible? Really? Like, it can't be this hard. Everyone is doing it. The proportion of guys that are getting eligible all these other places, we're like 0 for 2 now. Arguably 0 for 3. We've had a battle over international eligibility now 3 times. With Fedor twice and now Fodzodata. We got AD and Conan. So we are 2 for 4 on players getting them eligible. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's one of the worst percentages out there. On guys with more than one attempt. You don't even hear a lot of these guys like getting struck down. They all find a way. All these guys who should not be eligible keep finding a way. Dink Pate is going to play for Providence this year after having an NBA contract, but we can't get in this kid from France who nobody even knows if he's going to be good or not. Who, like, honestly might not have played a single minute this season. Who knows if he ever even turns into anything. Like, the odds of, I think, him showing up in a Big East Conference game for us were like 50-50 at best. So I don't know what's going on there. I have genuine questions about how we're handling our international stuff. Might not matter, because I think everything might have worked out for the best here with this roster, but we'll see. Last thing. Yeah, so from this Rasmussen supposedly candid conversation with somebody who may or may not exist. Supposedly, we only spent $8 million on this year's roster. That would likely come as a surprise to you, as it would to me. And it makes me doubt a little bit the authenticity, because the reports seemed to be circulating around, that we had spent right around $12 million on this roster. And that put us right into that tier of teams like Providence, like Xavier, similar spends. But the quarrel that apparently Bruce might have had, or again, might not have had, I don't know if this is real or not, is that UConn, St. John's, and Nova all spent $20 million or more, and that we cannot hope to compete in our conference if we can't get anywhere near that. If we're in this world at 40% of that. And that would be true. Of course that would be true. I don't know for sure what to think of this. Could you convince me that we only spent $8 million on this roster? You probably could. I'm the guy who's been beating the drum that every number you hear is inflated. And that the real numbers are probably not. They're probably like 60% of what people are saying they are. So does that track pretty much exactly with if we're hearing 12 million, it was really 8 million? Yeah, that would track. But I don't believe the gap is that wide. Did we make some budget ads? Probably. We did not pay Oswin $3 million. I know that's what people are saying. That is not the number I heard. So could you convince me that everyone else, like, say Enos was $1.5 million, maybe, if that. Let's say Davis was $1 million or less. McAndrew and Green probably come back for about that much. Yeah, like you could convince me. You could convince me. But then do I think that Nova and UConn and St. John's are all spending 20 plus? Like St. John's maybe. UConn, Kamenia, I'm sure, was at least 2. Getting some of those guys back, like getting Braylon Mullins back was probably 4 or 5. Getting Solo Ball, I know he's hurt, but I don't think they knew that at the time. So I'm sure that cost him something. Getting Demery back has got to be something. I don't know if they get to 20 either. Nova, I don't know how they get to 20. So my guess is it's either we spent 8 and none of them spent 20, or we spent 12 and they did spend 20. And it's just a guess on my understanding of the portal math. But would it be a little bit concerning to know that we're only spending $8 million on the program? Yeah, it absolutely would. And frankly, here's why. Because the next day, and this is what makes me think that there might be some legitimacy to this, the very next day that Creighton Athletics, the Go Creighton Twitter handle, put out like a breakdown of our financials. And it said we raised $7 million for men's basketball from Champions Circle, or whatever they call like the highest booster ring. If 80-something% of our transfer budget, 88% of our transfer budget is coming from just that, I would be a little concerned, I think. Because surely we have other revenue sources. So that would concern me a lot. Frankly, hearing that number, I'm even a little concerned at the 12 million number, but obviously there's administrative costs to running a basketball program, and of course we're going to be using the money from basketball to stimulate other sports too. Nor do I think we should necessarily turn away from that. I think there's probably a, middle ground, and maybe they're striking that, maybe they're not. It would be impossible to say without knowing the financials. Like, clearly we are investing a little bit in baseball. With some of the players we've been connected to, there's clearly a budget going around there. Our coaching staff definitely wasn't cheap. It is not cheap to run that program. I can tell you that for a fact. Volleyball, similar story. I think we are clearly investing. The players we're bringing in, like, these are big transfers, Aiden Ames and Trinity, I don't know how to say her last name. Big transfers, important pieces for this year's team. Hopefully they look a little better than they did in this scrimmage the other day. That was a little concerning. So clearly we're investing there. The women's team, I'm not sure how much we're really investing in, because it seems like our talent dropped off quite a bit. We've got some exciting young players, but I don't know if that's budget driven. I don't necessarily know how much you need a budget in women's basketball compared to some of these. Like, UConn is beating teams with or without a budget by 30. There's 4 teams at the end of the season that have a reasonable chance to win anything. To some degree, I think you have to be okay saying, yeah, we can't financially compete with that, so what's the point of financially competing at all? You know, like, if we can't compete with the top 4, what are we trying to do when one of them is in our conference? You know, I don't know. Maybe that's unfair for me to say. Soccer is not getting budget, and if they are, I'd be concerned about it on both ends. Softball, I think, had a decent season. I don't think anyone cares, and that's probably fine. I don't like saying that because, you know, as someone who was connected with, you know, somewhat of a non-revenue sport, I don't like saying just fuck all that, because we've shown the ability to be good at a lot of things at once. It raises the interesting question of Marcus Blossom's tenure, and there's a lot to say about it, and there's a lot of people with opinions. I do have a personal opinion. I have met him. I have had the occasion to interact with him. I don't think my opinion means a damn, so I'm just not going to share it. A lot of people are talking about people having issues with him. And it's one of those things where does it just catch on with the fan base at some point and become a stigma, even if it's not true? Or is it really the case because a lot of coaches are going to have had things they really liked with Rasmussen, right? There was an unspoken culture with Rasmussen. He was a guy you trust, he was a decision maker, but he also very clearly empowered these coaches, and that's why a lot of them stayed here for a long time. His track record with bringing in coaches is, again, maybe unparalleled. The amount of success that guy had. Ridiculous. So he leaves, there was always going to be a big change. They are very, very different personalities, him and Blossom. Very, very different. I can't speak to everything about how differently they do business, how differently they negotiate. These are the small things that can rub people the wrong way. A lot of people note in his press conferences, he's sometimes very impersonal with coaches, with members of the team, stuff like, especially, I remember the one that like got everyone going, like, what's going on here was the KBB leaving press conference where Kirsten Bernthal Booth passed it over to Rosen, and man, did it not seem like those two got along. It was very strange, and it felt like he was not like addressing her properly or taking the giving it the due attention that it maybe deserved. That was my first, I think, moment where I'm like, maybe there is some truth to this kind of stuff. And again, like I've talked to some boosters who say the same thing, like they're not big fans of him, and I'm not certain whether that comes from a place of objective truth or whether that's we just really liked Raz and we weren't going to like anyone else who took over. I could very easily believe either side of that, honestly. But when you look at his track record objectively, I think we've had this conversation before on Twitter. Like, it's hard to say anything worse than like B+, A- job. You've now secured some pretty big transitions in your biggest programs, and at the very least, you've got them all stable. Ed Service to Mark Kingston in baseball ought to be an upgrade, and so far, it kind of seems like it's going to. This year didn't go quite the way we were hoping, but you win a conference tournament in your handover year, and then you bring back a pretty good roster. You look like you're competing in the transfer portal. We had a recruit who ended up signing with the Brewers. Like, these aren't things that we usually, do. So it looks like we're going to compete. It looks like things are going to go pretty well there. Now, Service is an institution in that program, and any changeover from him is going to be difficult. I think the way that was handled seems from the outside to have gone really well. Because you could have made the argument for firing Service, too, a couple of times in his tenure. Things got a little shaky. It was not a cutting-edge program under Ed Service, whereas it seems like it's heading that direction now. Ed was the kind of guy you would bunt with a runner on first and one out sometimes, despite a lot of people telling him not to do that. But he was an institution. He was the program. Good guy, like leader of men kind of guy. building young men, like that kind of thing. So that transition had to be carefully done, and it seems like it went pretty well. And you got a good coaching staff in there, and it was hard. Like, you lost not only Service, you lost the whole coaching staff, and you could have lost a lot of that team, and you really didn't, and you really held on to it pretty well through the way you've handled it. And it's this, like, coach in waiting thing that is basically applied in all three places. There's obviously Huss and Mac, and then you have Brian Rosen and KBB, where Booth, again, is the program. She is the establishment. She was Creighton volleyball. She was the reason why everyone's like, yeah, this program, man, they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be around because she's there. She keeps bringing in talent. Like, girls want to play for her. They want to go to Creighton to be a part of what she's building. She's doing it the right way. She's embracing what's unique and special about Creighton, even if it's small. She's doing, like, modern things, right? It's a lot of the approach, like a lot of, like, mental health-ish kind of stuff she was doing. It was a lot of the stuff that people like to talk about, and, like, commentators will point out, like, yeah, focuses on the mental side of the game and things like that. And clearly, like, the teams, they all look like best friends. Like, like, I knew a lot of the girls on those teams, especially, like, the, like, 19-20 kind of teams. Like, yeah, everyone had great things to say about those programs all the time. So handling her stepping down, which, is unheard. Like, she'd gotten offered probably every job except Nebraska, and Nebraska came open that year, which is terrifying. Like, they got the person they were always going to pick. Busboom Kelly played there, was leading a top 5 program at Louisville. Like, yeah, that was an easy enough transition, whatever. She could have left, I'm sure, countless times and didn't. Does that sound similar to anybody? And then you got to replace her and keep everything intact. Fortunately, you have a rising star on the bench. You just go right to him and say, all right, you're our next guy. But dangerous still, right? Because it's like, we don't know for sure. Like, I'm just going to say this, and if it's wrong to say, maybe, I don't know. Feel like it's got to be a little different having a male coach. I feel like the level of comfort had to be much different with Booth. I would imagine home visits, recruiting visits, meetings with parents are a lot different. And that speaks, I think, a lot to very great coaching personality, coaching aura, but also, like, very calm and comfortable was her style, right? Like, and it worked, and it got a lot of people in. And they did great things, and, like, we had tons of talent. We've had tons of talent come through that program. Like, we would be running out of numbers to put in the rafters if we were doing that. Like, even forget, like, the Jaylee Winters, like, Taryn Cloth, you have an Olympian that came through in the last decade. And then you get to, like, Nora, Ava, and Kendra. Like, they had tons of talent. And then you change over, and it doesn't look like it's going well right away. Like, I think we lost the first 2 or 3 games last season, and God, I think that's as many as we had lost the whole prior year. Turned it around and made a run. And, if they had played a better game against Kentucky, would have had a shot at the Final Four. But it's another coach leaving without achieving, like, the thing. With Coach Service, the thing was probably, like, reaching the second weekend. You made it to that Game 7 against Michigan 2019, where you knocked Adley Rutschman, Oregon State, out of the tournament, and then come up just a little short in Game 7. By just a little, I mean, like, 8 runs short, but God help them, they were out of pitching. And that Michigan team ended up being the national runner-up, so you just never know. But Booth's was, let's get to the Final Four. She hung so many banners, she won so many trophies, but we couldn't get to that thing. Like, it's the same thing that's eluding the basketball program. Even the women's team, like, got to an Elite Eight, got right on the doorstep, and, I mean, they ran into fucking South Carolina, so it wasn't going to happen, but, it's like all those programs are pushing against the ceiling, and they just cannot push it up any higher. And then we get to the point where, like, we've got the coach. If you would have asked me, I'd be like, yes, volleyball is going to do it. It's going to happen in the next few years. I really thought it was going to happen with Nora and Ava and Kendra. Like, honestly, that Penn State game, that 5th set, man, that fucking heartbreaker. Like, as far as, like, man, I have not been into many more games than that one. That was like a top 20 for sure, like game that I have been into, like needed to see a win from. And didn't get there. So now Rosen, though, is building a little momentum, finished last year really well, ran through conference again, won the titles again. Keeping a hold of that conference. This year, we'll see. This year is a little bit of a reset. You lose some of your players. You don't have Ava Martin anymore. And that's not easy to replace. You basically had almost a decade straight of having like a dominant player in there. Whether it was her, Nora, Jaylee, Tarrant, like all these big names. Now you don't have that anymore. Baseball is a little different because it's always like some big, like they keep finding a guy to rely on in baseball. Basketball, Ryan Kalkbrenner's gone. Greg McDermott's gone. The two like fixtures of the program, because dating back from Kalkbrenner, there's only been one other stopgap year, and it was post Doug. 1 year post Doug. All right, we found our next core guys. 1 year post Kalk, can we find our next core guys? You had 18-19, I think you could say, was like the post Foster and Kyrie Thomas year. We found our next core guys, Zagorowski, right? Like Zagorowski, Tyshawn, Mitch, we've got it. That's our next core. Zagorowski, Tyshawn, Mitch, Kalk, we've got him. Let's keep going. Kalk falls off. Shit, we've got nobody. Okay, next year, we need to find somebody this year. Hopefully it's Jackson, but that's the struggle. So all of that, taking back to that, Blossom has managed some coaching changes really, really well. And the Mac Huss one seems like it was orchestrated for him. You could say he got really lucky with the Booth to Rosen transition, that you have a guy like that on your bench who contributed to these teams' success. And we'll see, maybe he holds it up, maybe he doesn't. The Service to Kingston one, I think, seems to have gone about as well as it could have. We'll see what happens. This is his first year on his own. We'll see what happens. Or next year's. This was his first year on his own. Next year, we'll see. We'll see how it progresses. So it's interesting. It's really interesting, and I don't think we'll have the answers this year. Again, without giving too much of my personal opinion, it seems like a lot of people have issues, but the track record seems strong enough. But you start to be concerned at some point. The Sockers aren't looking great. Baseball had a down year, but not a bad year. Still finished in the Prasco places. Volleyball should be fine, but this year could be a struggle, and now basketball's in the worst spot it's been in over a decade. He will be judged on if basketball comes back or not. If he is not able to pull basketball back, because the concern is always going to be investment in the program. It's going to be dollars invested in athletics. If things start to go south, they already did. If they continue to go south, does the well dry up? Are people not willing to invest in our programs under him? That is going to be the question going forward. I'll be interested to see where it goes. I really will, because it's hard to say for sure whether the issues that people are citing are legitimate or not. You just can't say from an outside perspective. A lot of people saying it, though. A lot of people saying it. There was always the rumor that like him and Mac never got along. And that should be like the last thing you're trying to do if you're coming in as a new AD. Some of the initiatives of the athletics office in the time that he's been in place have pissed a lot of people off, and I think rightfully so. Like things with the game day atmosphere, decisions being made about the program, like going on Twitter to fight everybody about how far back you've pushed the student section when you clearly have. It's this thing like, we're not idiots, we know you did it, and you know you did it. It's for money, we know, but you're sacrificing something there, and we need you to acknowledge that, because you probably know that you're doing that, but we want to hear you say it so we don't think you're glossing over it. So it's stuff like that. Prices go up again. Yeah, that was going to happen, wasn't it? This is the year I have not renewed my season tickets just because I've been in Chicago 2 years now. It's not as easy to get back for multiple games as I thought. You're not exactly making return on your investment by selling them when the team isn't in the top 25 either. You're going to sell them for like $5, and that's fine because it's a big stadium, and that's what happens. Okay, that's all I got. We'll be talking more about this team going forward. I'm probably going to get some guests on at some point or go on some people's stuff. It's an interesting time. A lot is happening, and my voice is pretty much gone at this stage. So if you've kept listening this long, God help you. But thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.